Hello, welcome to the September 3rd, 2024 Club Cubase live stream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the live stream today. If you've not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can simply ask questions in the live chat field, or you can email questions if they're a little more involved. You could email questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, which version number, so if it's version 11, 12, 13, and also if you could specify the operating system, that information is helpful. When asking questions, my ability to actually answer questions in a real-time manner may soon be eclipsed with the number of questions. So if you don't see an immediate response to your question after typing it in, we will go through all the questions chronologically and get through all the questions in the order that they were asked. And if you wanted to, several hours after the live stream ends, we should have an index with all of the topics that have been covered in today's live stream with timestamps pinned to the top of the comments field. So you could use that as a reference for particular topics. Also, if we want to look up topics that have been covered in previous live streams, there's over 34,000 different questions. You could go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that site. I think he's on. Yes, we see Jan who's on. So give a big thanks to Jan for that. We have two people that serve as moderators, Agent K and Jazz Dude, so we'll give special thanks to them. They're not Steinberg employees, they just really kind of do it out of the goodness of their hearts, so we will make sure to give, and to make it a better community experience. We also want to give a special thanks to Jazz Dude for his work with the Cubase Nation Discord, so it's unofficial Discord site, which is a wonderful reference for the Steinberg community. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products, and I'm the host today. I'm presenting from outside of Alexandria, Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C. in Alexandria, Virginia, in the United States. And if you're watching us live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. It's always fascinating to see people from all over the world. All right, and with that, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we see Lebaldo just saying hola. So looks like maybe that was from yesterday. All right, so we have a question from Zephaniah. It says, hey Greg, can I create my own drum sample patterns in Groove Agent SE using Cubase 13 Pro on PC? So I don't think, the full version of Groove Agent will allow you to create patterns inside. But if we wanted to come over, so let's add an instance of Groove Agent SE, and we'll show some of the differences. So it's one of the differences is that there's kind of an internal drum editor inside of the full version, but not within the SE version. So let's say I want to, we'll go ahead and load up a kit. I'll do a quick beat agent kit. All right, so there's no, what we can do is, I think, actually just kind of drag pattern. So let's say if we make a pattern here, Okay, so now we have pattern pads, and let's see if we could drag from, so we could take a pattern directly from here and drag it directly on from our timeline. And if we have, let's say, a actual, let's say if we have beat designer pattern, that we could insert this from the beat designer. So we'll say, let's see if we copy and if we paste, I don't think that would work. Okay, but if we take a pattern from our project window here, so let's say I want to put this pattern from beat agent, we could insert the pattern at the left locator. So let's say we take this pattern and then we could drag it. So we can just come over here and drag and drop patterns into, like from Cubase project window. Now where it is slightly different than the full version of Groove Agent is that when we come here, let's say we go to the full Groove Agent SE. And when we get a pattern, we can edit, and then we could program directly inside of Groove Agent, the full version. But we don't have this pattern editor, but this is very similar to what you have in Cubase already. So if you want to do it with SE, then it would have to be programmed inside of Cubase and then dragged and dropped. But the full version of Groove Agent will allow you to kind of program the patterns directly within the plugin. All right, and second question, Zephaniah just says, and also, how do I find the preference window? So if it's the preferences within Cubase, you would, on the Windows platform, you'd find it under the edit menu. If you're on Mac, it could be preferences under the Cubase menu. In later Mac OS versions, it may say settings instead of preferences. So it's just a Mac OS thing, and then you'd be able to find your Cubase preferences or settings directly from there. So from the Cubase menu on Mac OS, from the edit menu on Windows. Okay, so we see from Y42, which I believe is Val, what is the advantage of printing the mix inside Cubase to exporting it? So there's no difference in quality when we have a file. So let's say if we want to open up our project here. So if we choose to print inside of the project, it just means that the project itself has a mix that's going to be inside. So we can, so let's say if I come over here, I'll take all the events and we'll set our left and right locators. I like to print inside of the mix. So once my project is done, I will come over here and we'll say, okay, I want to do my stereo mix, and I want this in after export to create an audio track. So I could use this as a reference for if someone else, if I was handing off the project to someone, it's the same quality, there's no difference. It's just that now we could save this particular project with like a reference file. So as we listen to it now, so now when I save the project, a lot of times people will mute this, but they always have a reference that's associated and a mixdown within this particular project. It could be saved to a different location. It could be saved directly into your mixdown folder, but there's no sonic difference between the two. Just to kind of keep things clean, a lot of times I choose to export so that when I open up the project, if it's been done, I could just listen to my particular file, and I know that that file, the mix is going to load. But again, no sonic difference between whether it is exported directly, externally, or if we're doing an internal mixdown. All right, and we see Y42 is happy because they got the first like of today. All right, so we see question, possible here to have a key command to shift punch in by a certain number of bars. So it's not really, there isn't a way of doing it. So if we wanted to do like, a punch in based on particular bars, if you want to just quickly set the range tool, and then there is a preference that you could set here where if we go to range editing, that cycle follows range selection. So now I could just come over here and select the range, and that would automatically set my punch in and punch out points if I hit I plus O. But a lot of times, I don't, and of all the punch ins I've done over the years, I'm not sure I would say I need a 4-bar punch in. Often it's going to be a punch in, like a specific amount of time. I think that the time could vary. Could be that you're punching in maybe 8 bars, or you're punching in one single note. So it may not be the most useful thing, but if you wanted to do it quickly, you can just come and activate this particular preference. So again, under editing, that cycle follows a range selection. And then if you need to punch in on a specific part, you could select it with the range, and then your punch in, punch out are automatically activated and enabled for you. All right. And if you had to punch in, so let's say if we wanted to shift that particular punch in, once I have the range selected, we could just choose to nudge the range, and that would automatically nudge the particular punch points. So let's say I was punching in here from 33 to 26. I could set my snap to bar, and I'm going to hold down Control or Command plus the left and right arrows, and then I could just simply nudge my punch in and punch out points just by using kind of the nudge and nudging the range. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Val, or Y42. All right, so we see from Isa Yoka Beats, I think this might be in French. Let me see if I could translate it quickly. Give me a second to Google translation. I hope it works. Okay. Okay, so we see question, how can I play chords with my mouth? And I'm not sure if this is a good translation or not. Maybe someone could help if it isn't. How can I play chords with my mouth on Cubase and cover them in MIDI? So if you wanted to do that, you would need a pitch to MIDI type of solution. So if you wanted to, take particular, if you have notes that are sung, what you can do is come over here, and if you go into the Very Audio editor, this really isn't the intention of the Very Audio editor, but once we do that, we could, within Very Audio, we can extract MIDI. And these MIDI notes could trigger chord pads. But a lot of times we can do from your voice, we could extract the MIDI from your voice, but this MIDI could then be used to trigger chord pads if needed. But let me know if I'm completely off with the Google translation on that. All right, inactiver user asks, "Hi Greg, how are you doing today?" I'm doing great, and thanks for asking. It says, "My question is, how can I open up my saved session template? And when I want to save that, how can I save it without overwriting my session template?" All right, so when we're starting a project with a template, we will come over here. So a lot of times, make sure that you've actually have your project and you saved it as a template. So when you save it as a template, its file path in a hierarchy of where files are saved are not associated with templates. So when we start a new project, we'll come over here. So let's say, okay, we want to do a user template. So let's say we're going to do February 16th, 2024 here. At this point, we're prompted by default to set a project folder. Ideally, you'd want a separate project folder for each song. So we will come over here and I'll just say, let's create a new folder, and we'll call this September 3rd, 2024. And I'll get my keyboard on the correct computer. Okay, so we've created a new folder. We have my template. So everything we're doing now is based on that. Now, if generally a template, you don't have saved files, but now when I go to save my project, it's going to go into this folder. It's not affecting the template. It's just going to go into this particular folder, and we could give our project a name. So the template has no correlation to file paths of the project or where files are going to be recorded to. The file path for that's actually going to be determined once you start a template. The project path is determined. So we're going to load up a template here. We click create. At this step, we say this is when we define our folder. Now, if and that came, I think, in version 11. It used to be a default location, but now it defaults to prompt for project location. Again, have each project in its own unique folder, each song in its own unique folder, and that will make your work so much easier with that. Okay, so we see Uno Memento checking in from Finland. And he has a question. It says, "I've been thinking about getting the Absolute 6, Greg. Could you briefly describe what I'm getting, please?" All right, so I think I was clever enough to... So let's take a look at Absolute. So when we go to Absolute 6, which is on sale, so there's currently a Steinberg 40th anniversary promo going on. Steinberg's having a birthday party on Friday in Hamburg. So let's go ahead and, so the Absolute 6 is going to include, for the sampler, Hallian 7. It's also going to include some of, if you want to do synthesizers, it's going to include FM Lab, Retrolog 2, Sounds of Soul, Pad Shop 2, Polarity, Skylab, Anima, Voltage. All of these synthesizer instruments will come with you. So you get even Haliotron, which is like a mellotron. All right, so you have brass instruments, organ. You have different pianos. So it comes with the Grand, which is 30 gigabytes of wonderful piano samples. You get Groove Agent 5, the full version backbone. These particular Groove Agent expansions, World Percussion, Rock Essentials. If you're looking for guitars, you get Tails with that. Bass, you get the electric bass. Cinematic instruments, you'll have strings, studio strings, symphonic orchestra, World Instrument, Dark Planet, Olympus Choir. So these are all, I think it's 130 gigabytes of content that comes with it, but all this for, I think it's on sale currently like $249 if you lived in the US. And if so, that's and also if you have a loyalty voucher, so if you have a Cubase Pro, if you go into your My Steinberg account, look in the vouchers area, that you may be able to get it even cheaper, 70% off for being a loyal Steinberg user. So I think it's a great deal. All right, and we have Stefan checking in from Sweden. Thanks for joining us. And we see Jan from Cubase Index. And we have Tim K. says, grateful to be joining again from Zeist. And Buddy is cat waves a paw to my cat Steven, Stella, Mark Raven's dog, and any other muse-like pets. And he's anxious to learn. All right, and Roland Stuff is checking in from Sussex. We have Benny from Sweden as well. We have Frankie Fresh Music joining from the Netherlands. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we have a question in, I think it's German. Let me see if I could Google translate it. Bear with me just a second. Okay, and the question, and I'm not sure if this is a correct translation, says, when I'm in the editor, it is not possible to select some notes. Okay, so let's take a look. We find something that has some multiple MIDI. Okay, so it could be that, check to make sure, it could be that maybe we had multiple parts selected. So if I come here, just get my keyboard to go to the right computer. Okay, so let's say I now come over here and I could see multiple parts and some notes. It could be that you may want to just come over, and I'll just take this in the larger one because there's a part edit mode. So let me just find where it's at. Okay. So you may see this little icon here. It may be over to the right where you see these kind of stacked. So we could choose to do all parts on the active track, or all parts. So it could be that, we have one part that is our primary and we're looking at other parts. And then you may just switch between. So as we do this, we could see that this is violin 1. When I click on this particular part, this could be violin 2, and this may be the viola. So at this point, it could be that maybe the other parts aren't active. So try setting this. So when you go to part editing mode, to maybe set it to active, to all parts, because now when I come over here, you know, sometimes it may switch where you would try to set this to all parts and see if that makes a difference. All right, so we have Fly V just checking in from Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us today. Wonderful to see Tim Weinheimer from Mission Viejo and Dallas LaRue from Las Vegas. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see Roland Stuff took advantage of the current sale and got Absolute 6. Congratulations, you'll love it. All right, great to see Gerald Ely from Martinez, California. You know, we have Alexander Plasko from Connecticut. We have C6PO. It's twice as better as C3PO saying hello. All right, so we see Roland Stuff asks, says, hi Greg, could you use the extract MIDI from Very Audio to create a file that would then show in a song's musical score, example vocal melody line, or an instrument recorded as audio? Thanks. Yeah, so you could do it for kind of monophonic parts like vocals. It works great for, but also let's say if I want to jump over here, let's say I want to take this bass part here, so we'll do a quick Very Audio. So, and now if we wanted to see this as our score, I'll just clean this up. Some quick interpretive flags here. And let's say I want to set my key here. Looks like I'm in A. So yeah, you could definitely use Very Audio for a vocal or like a bass part and just have that automatically translate directly over. All right, so we see Soren is busy but just popped in to leave a thumbs up. So thanks for doing that. Hope to see you on future live streams. All right, Unrealized is saying, hey, Norway is calling. So thanks for joining us. Always wanted to go to Norway. All right, so HSP Product says, hey, hi, I like working with sub buses of surround channel. I route the signals separately in my RME, then do loopback. I record them in Cubase. Is there a simpler method to sum the channels? So let's say if I had, like, you know, whether it's surround or, you know, let's say I want to take these parts, I'm going to create a group track. Okay, so let's say I have this. So let's say I have this group here. This bass is going into the group. And let's say on the group I wanted to apply like an effect just so you can make sure it's passing through the group. So we'll go over here and let's throw a flanger on because it's always easy to hear. So instead of having to go out through your army, what I think you could do is just go to your audio track, and whether you want to do it as a mono, stereo, or 5.1 track, we're going to add, let's say, a stereo track, and I'm going to set its input, and we'll say connect to bus, and we'll say we're going to do this to group 1, which we just created. So now when we do this, I could just hit record on the audio track. And we can see so now when we want to play this back, so we're sending audio to the group, and we could just create an audio track and then set the group as the input. So whether it's mono, stereo, 5.1, that way you could just place a 5.1 interleaved track into record and capture that way without having to go out and set up kind of, which I'm sure is not the most obvious routing choices. You could just do it internally. All right, so we have Declan Kidd checking in from Dublin. Thanks for joining us online today. All right, let me jump to one of the questions that we had mailed in. All right, and I think this was from Dallas LaRue, if I'm not mistaken. It says, question is, when I get a new computer, I have them transfer the content from the old hard drive to the new computer. Will that work with Cubase? Will it come up as it was on the old computer? So yeah, what you have to do is just kind of make the connection. So if you're transferring, you have, let's say, a lot of Groove Agent kits, a lot of other different content for samples for Hallian Sonic, Groove Agent, Pad Shop, different loops, and you want all these to automatically be aware when you're transferring maybe to a different folder or to a different hard drive on a new computer. So there's a utility called the Steinberg Library Manager. So we'll open this up. And really all you'd have to do is just kind of come over here, and you can see your library default location. So wherever your content is moved to, you can just simply change the folder here to where all of your content is on your new system. If it kind of changed the folder structure or the hierarchy, like it was on the D drive but now it's on the E drive, something like that, this way it will automatically look to this particular location. What you could also do is, if we actually go to your particular so let's say where your samples are copied to, so I'm going to come over here to, and we could see the path right here when we go into details. So we'll say, okay, we want to come over here, and once we find that particular file, let me just, all you'd have to do is just kind of right click on like a VST sound file. So here, I'll just do it from Media Bay. We could jump there quickly. Okay, so once we come over here, so let's say, okay, I need to find okay, so here we could actually, if you kind of right click on just find So, but you could, wherever your .vst sound files are, you could just right click and say open in Steinberg Library Manager, and then all the content that will automatically tell the library manager will say, Cubase, look for the content in this location. So all you have to do is kind of double click by default on the VST sound file, and then it will automatically open up the library manager and make the connection between your content and your Cubase. All right, let me just All right, so I just see from Unrealize, says I've tried to ask this before a long time ago, and the answer I got, well, it works, but it's somewhat cumbersome to use. So I'm not sure if I saw maybe the question, maybe if you could ask the question again. So I'm not sure if I got the full question. Give me 1 second. I'll just open up my chat in a different way. So maybe Unrealized, maybe just if you could ask the question again, I just wanted to make sure maybe your question, if it was too long, maybe it didn't come through. I see, hey, Norway calling, but then I don't see. Okay, so I see, sorry, Greg accidentally clicked enter, so question's coming. All right, so we look forward to that. All right, wonderful to see Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina. All right, so we see Max Head. Says jumped recently from Windows to Mac. Mouse scroll isn't smooth in Cubase. So I've always found it pretty smooth. I tend not to, the mouse that, if I had to say anything bad about a mouse, it would probably be the Apple Magic Mouse. I found to work very inconsistently, and you could find that with many other programs. So I'm not sure if you're using a Magic Mouse or if you're using a different mouse. I use a mouse that could go back and forth between multiple computers, and I find that the scrolling in Cubase is very smooth. I think sometimes the Apple Magic Mouse can be like super precise, and that could cause different scrolling issues. But perhaps if you try the same mouse on your Mac that you had on your PC, if you're using a different one, and see if the scrolling improves. But I found that the scrolling to be pretty fast, and not to be an issue on Mac. But I gave up on the Apple Magic Mouse personally. All right, so we see Y42 just says about the nudge / punch in, punch out. Most artists want to record phrase for phrase, so it would be great to be able to just move the punch in and out locators. So when you do this, so if we have a range selection here, and we have that, and, we nudge. And we are nudging, there's a good chance that not every phrase is going to, be perfectly the same phrase, but you should be able to kind of just nudge. And again, with that preference setup where you need to say, okay, we just need to punch that, we need to punch this, I think it's pretty fast just using kind of the range tool and having the left and right locators, which could be tied directly to your punch in and punch out points. Yeah, and as Jazz Dude mentions, about transferring the VST sound content to another disk and then reactivate the library manager with actually one click and then tell it to register in place. All right. So we see Martin checking in from Germany. All right, so we see everyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn today. All right, sorry about that. All right, so we see Plentian, Siabanga Makahoba. Hi, Greg. I got instrument track and I've been routed to group tracks. I record audio and MIDI. Audio tracks have group tracks. How to save 5 or more of these and import to new project with audio tracks. Okay, so we'll just start off, do new project here. We just do new, create empty. Okay, so let's say we do an instrument track and then create just a quick. Okay. So I'll just go ahead and record a couple nonsensical things here. Get some data in. Okay, so I got instrument track have been routed to group tracks. So I record audio and MIDI. Audio tracks have group tracks. How to save 5 or more of these and import to new project with audio tracks. All right, so let's say we have this, and and if you have like 13, I think that we could now just take. So we have retrolog here. So let's say we have retrolog playing. Okay, and so if I wanted to route this to an audio track, and one of the things we could just now take instrument tracks and route the audio directly. So let's say if we record this. Okay, so now we've recorded the audio. So audio tracks have group tracks. How to save 5 or more of these and import into project with audio tracks. So let's say if we just had this duplicated a couple times. All right, so let's say we have all of these. If we have this saved in a project, okay, I do a new project, create empty. Then if we wanted to come over here, we could say, let's import tracks from project. Thought I saved it in that folder. Let me just check my all right, just gonna check my audio folder where okay. So we'll go back to our new project here. And let's import, and we could choose tracks from project. And we could see all of our particular files here. So if you wanted to import the MIDI and the audio from that project, we can now just do it like that. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to do, or if I'm misunderstanding. See, Brian Sawyer Sr. says the Logitech MX mice can do 3 different computer devices. Use mine for PC, laptop, and iPad. Been a fan for years. So yeah, I have one keyboard and one mouse that's not a Logitech, but they kind of go back and forth between multiple computers. So I think it's a great way to go. All right, so we have Tiago checking in from Newcastle in the UK. Hope you're enjoying your time in England. Okay, so Unrealize just says, let's say I have a drum pattern with a long string of repeated notes on an arbitrary drum note. Is there a way to easily select those notes and then turn that selection to select every other second note? Yeah, so we can do that in a logical editor. So let's take a look. All right, so let's say I'll just all right, so let's say we have a bunch of D1 notes, a bunch of C sharp ones. Okay, so let's say in this case I want to select every other D1 note. Okay, so we could do it, we could select every other note that occurs. So let's say we want to look at this in our drum editors, or we could do it on a specific pitch. So we'll come here to our MIDI, to our logical editor. So here we want to say, we're going to choose select for kind of our, so we want to select MIDI notes. So, and by default, this will say MIDI note. And then we could say we want to go to last event. Or I'm sorry, let's go to maybe context variable. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, so we want to go to last event, and we can say equal and value 1. We want to choose event counter, and then we could hit 2. So if we come here, we can now select every other note. Let me do this outside of the drum editor, or I'll just open up. Excuse me, let me clear my throat. I'll open up kind of a real world example. So now in this, we could say, we could have it select like every other note, but we could also choose to say, I want, let's say I want this to be like F#1. Okay, so now what we could do is I'm going to remove this line. We want to select types of notes. We want to go to subtype, and we're going to say the pitch is going to be equal to F#1. So we want to take every F#1. We go to last event, every other event, event counter 2. So now as we hit apply, every other note event is selected. So if I'll extend this out so it'll be more visible. So I hit apply, and now every other F#1 or every other MIDI note can be selected, kind of however you want to work with it. So choose select, type is equal to note, which will be the default parameter that's assigned there. And we'll say pitch is equal if you wanted to select a particular pitch, often used with drums, or if you don't need to specify pitch, you could leave that line out. And then we'll say last event, every other event to event counter. And then if you want it to be every third note, put a 3. If you want every fourth note, put a 4. If you want every other note, put a 2. And then hit apply, and you could save that as a preset if needed. Okay. All right, wonderful to see Michael Marshall checking in from Somerset, UK. I enjoyed listening to your PC shared on the Zoom social. Thanks for sharing that with us. All right, and we have Street Academia joining from Tema in Ghana. Thanks for joining, being with us this evening for you. All right, so Inactiver user asks, how can I colorize my MixConsole faders and the overall mixer tracks? I like to colorize my faders for drums to red faders, for vocals in blue, so on. So the faders are going to be fixed for different types of events. So when we come here to our MixConsole, we can see that we could have, you know, effects channels will be one color, MIDI tracks will have a different fader color, inputs and outputs will be red. But if we wanted to carry over the track colors, so let's say if I have a number of tracks, all right, and let's say these are all my drums that I'm using. I'm going to select all these. Let's come over here. Let's say I want these all to be red. So when we go into our MixConsole, if you don't see kind of these colors in the MixConsole, if we come over here to your preferences or settings, and then we'll go to under user interface, we'll see track and MixConsole color settings. So right now these are all red. So if I go to my full screen mixer, we'll see kind of the red colors throughout. But when we again go to preferences, if you're not seeing those particular colors at this point, we could choose to, you'll see MixConsole colors. So we just hit apply, and now we won't see the colors throughout the mixing console. And we could now come over here and just hit apply again, and now we could have those particular colors through the console. And if you wanted those to be more distinct, we could adjust the color strength here. So, but we could also just kind of put that kind of halfway is usually the default. And if we want to see the fader colors, these are the fader colors for the different types of tracks. So if you see a green fader, you know that's a VCA. If you see, red, that's going to be an input or output channel. FX channels or this color, synth channels, or you think it as instrument, synth channels. You could do it. And audio channels will have different default faders. So the faders aren't going to be adjustable for different types of audio tracks, but audio tracks can have one color versus MIDI tracks is a distinct color versus groups and VCAs. See, Jazz Dude is recommending for Windows users that are using a LAN to use mouse without borders, Microsoft utility for using your mouse on different computers. Yeah, so I always have to, for my personal setup, I have kind of my studio PC, my work MacBook Pro, and like a Microsoft Surface that I use to kind of read all of the comments during live streams and other office tasks. So that wouldn't necessarily work because I'm using kind of cross-platform, but that's a great suggestion. All right, so we see Unrealize just says, thank you, Greg. I see where you're going. This is similar to last time I asked back in the day. I'm wondering if I can have pre-selected notes and then change that into every other note. So let me know if you want it to be like every other pre-selected note. Let's see if we could do that. Okay, so if we want like every other, so let's say I select like notes on the downbeat here. And so if we want it to be every other currently selected note, if that's what you want, let's see if we could do that. All right, so let's say we want to type is equal to note. Let's say property is set to is selected. And then we'll do our last event, every other event, event counter 2. So let's see if this works. So we have measures 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Those notes selected. No, it doesn't. But let me know if this is what you want to do. If you have like notes that are already selected and you wanted to select every other one of those, And you could always send me just a quick picture, like a screenshot if you want, to clubcubase@steinberg.de. Okay, so we see also just another comment from Unrealized, say like you had notes for like 4 bars, but you only want to change the notes in bar 2. Okay. Yeah, so we can set, so if we wanted to only change notes like in a particular bar, probably a logical editor might be longer to set up than just actually doing it. So say we want to select notes and their position is bigger or equal to, let's say, inside bar range. So this would allow us to select yeah, so here what we could do is, we could do it like inside the bar range. Like I say, I want all of these notes that are within like that particular range, but not necessarily within measure 2. But let's say let's say we want to select all notes in measure 13. So we'll say 13 through 14. So here we say inside range. Then we could select every notes within measure 13 through 14. So it says, say like you had notes for like 4 bars and you want to change the notes in bar 2. So you could do this, but so if you wanted to just select particular notes, so let's say even if I come here, and now we could only select notes within a particular bar range, but it's not going to be the second measure of the selection. You would specify the particular range there. So, but if I'm misunderstanding, let me know. All right, so we have Spaces Water saying hi from England. We have Desmond Lang from Atlanta. Thanks for joining us. All right, and Desmond's question is, I need assistance using Spectral Layers in Cubase. I get confused if I do more than one track. Okay, so let's pop over to different project. All right, so we could load it as a track extension. So let's say I have this drum loop, I double click, and we currently see it in our sample editor. If I select the track and we go to Spectral Layers, now when I double click on the track, it's going to load it into Spectral Layers for me. So when I want to go to, let's say, this track, I double click, and because the track, we haven't added the track into my ARA extension. So now, let's say I do this via Wavelab, that when I double click on this, it will go here. I double click on the event on this track, which is sent to Spectral Layers. It goes over here. Let's take this track. I want to send this track to Spectral Layers. So it's not necessarily, what we would do is double click on the particular event. So on this event, we haven't loaded Spectral Layers as an extension, but this one I have, this one I have, this one I've loaded an extension. So when I double click, it automatically launches within the sample editor the ARA extension. So let me know if that makes sense or if it's not clear still. All right, wonderful to see Sable Winters on. It's great to see you on the Zoom meetup on Friday. All right, so we see Space, I guess IS Water asks, if you have Cubase installed, can you use stock VSTs in another DAW, or is it only via Cubase only? So the plugins that are available with Cubase are only going to be available to use within Cubase. They're not VST3. They are VST3 plugins, but they're designed to run only within Cubase and not within other DAWs. And I think that's pretty much the case for all DAWs, that stock plugins won't run in other. I'm probably mistaken. I don't use other DAWs, but I think that for the most part, it's kind of an industry standard that most of the DAWs will have their stock plugins be unique and only usable for those particular for that particular application. All right. So Inactiver user asks, so I can't just set the color faders myself, like one audio track fader is blue, one audio track fader is red, that I can see the overall color for the audio tracks. Did I get that right? That is correct. So different types of tracks in the mixer will have consistent, so it's again broken down by different types of tracks as opposed to the actual track colors of the faders. And again, you could just come over here to preferences or settings, go to user interface and MixConsole fader colors, and you could change the fader colors for different types of tracks. All right, so we see from HSP Products, is there a method for arranging violins and testing harmonization combinations that work together in an effective way? So if you wanted to, we'll just start a quick project here. So if you're composing with like a chord track or within a particular scale, so let's say we want to come over here. So let's add an instrument track. We'll do just a little violin action. All right, and let's make it more. All right, so I want to come over here. Let's just start composing. So we could kind of utilize a scale mode here inside of Cubase. So one of the things that we could do is say, okay, when we're in our key editor, we have a scale assistant. So let's say I want my scale to be in D major. Okay. So one of the things that I could do is, let's say, okay, I want to come here. All right, so let's say we have our violin melody. All right, so now one of the things that we can do is let's say, okay, since we've gone to our scale and we defined our editor scale of being D major, so now we could actually colorize, not based on velocity, but based on scales and chords. Okay, so now when I want it to, write, there's a couple of things that we could do. One is we could actually just come right over here and we have this little option here. So we kind of hover over and we have pitch visibility. So one of them would be show pitches from the scale assistant. So as soon as I actually turn this on, now I could write notes in, and these notes we know will be perfectly in the same key because these notes are exactly within the particular key. So we'll say, okay, we want to come over here. Let's make this. I'll move this over. So now, kind of no matter what I type in, I know that these will be harmonious with each other and within the same key. So we listen to it. So as we would do this now, if we change our, let's say if we come over here and let's say I move this to particular notes, I want to have a D sharp, let's make this a C natural. And now when we want to actually kind of look at the colors, we could actually just kind of see the particular colors based on scales and chords. So if we have notes, we could actually kind of see different colors based upon our scale. So if we wanted to see within scale or within chord, so we could actually kind of utilize the colors, but check out like the pitch visibility. And then once you have that particular, scale defined, at this point, we could just, any note that we write in will automatically be correct. So, and then there's also, if we were playing from your keyboard, you could snap live input so that as you play notes, if you played a note that was out of key, it would automatically transpose the note that's out of key to being in the key of the particular song. Okay. All right, so we see from HSP products, sorry, missed this question. Let me just copy it into the translator. With me just a second. Something about combined panner. All right, so we have a question. Just says, please, I can't change the type panning, stereo combined panner, stereo balanced panner. Okay, so it could be that when we have this, let's say we have an audio track, we're going to have a mono track, and let's have a stereo track. Okay, so when we go to our mono track, since it is only one channel, we don't get the option of switching between our stereo combined because there's only one channel of information and we can pan that one channel of information freely. Now, since this is a stereo channel, we could just come over here and right click, and we see we could switch between our balance panner like we have, or the combined panner. So let's say we have a mono channel and we wanted to have the combined panner. What we could do is click right here on this little dot, and we see one circle. So that means it's a mono. I'm going to switch that to a stereo. So now that I've switched this track from a mono track to a stereo track, now I could right click and we could get kind of the balanced or combined panner. So if you're on a mono track, you probably won't have the option of having a combined panner, only a balanced panner. So make sure that you're in a stereo track. And again, you could just toggle back and forth by clicking here on the channel configuration, just like that. Thanks for your question. Get to use my All right, so we see from inactive or user, how can I scroll from left to right in the mixer view fast without using the scroll bar below and accidentally changing setting when using the mouse wheel? So let's say if we're in, and this works in the full screen mixer. So I'll just add a bunch of audio tracks here. Okay, so if we are in kind of our full screen mixer view, get my Mac to wake up to Bluetooth, keyboard. Okay, so I'll just come here, let's say to MixConsole. So if you're in the MixConsole, if you leave the mouse in the meter area, now you could just scroll using the scroll wheel. And if you notice that wherever I leave it, it's going to leave the mouse in the meter area. So we could just navigate like this without having to go to the bottom. So we could just navigate right here very easily, left to right. But it doesn't work in this meter view, but they did make this much bigger to grab onto, but not so much in, so it works a little differently in the standalone mixer versus the lower zone mixer. I'm not sure if there's more logic behind that or not, but try putting it again. See if I get my computer to wake up. Keyboard. All right. And if you accidentally did move a fader, you know, just hit Alt or Option plus Z, or you could just simply undo your MixConsole actions right there. All right, so we see from Yaz again. Great to see you on the live stream. It says possible to buy Cubase 13.14 with Ideal in Europe. So you could buy Cubase 13. Is currently, Cubase 14. It hasn't been released yet, so you can't buy that. But you could buy Cubase 13. So if you live in Europe, you could buy it. You could buy it from a local dealer, or you could purchase it from the Steinberg online shop, and you can purchase from the Steinberg online shop. And I think just about every country, there might be some that are under sanctions, but basically you could buy directly from the Steinberg online shop. Okay, sorry, my chat field just jumped on me. All right, Martin Holvegen asks, I'm sure I pronounced that wrong. What is the preferred program for dubbing a film, Cubase or Wavelab? So I would say Nuendo, because what Nuendo is going to have is special ADR functionality built in. So this is one of the distinctions between Cubase and Nuendo. So Nuendo has like very specific ADR functionality, which is great if you're doing localization for different countries in different languages. Okay, so let's say we have our video. All right, so let's say we want to go right there. So Nuendo has what's called an ADR panel. So we'll go to our project, and once we come over here, ADR. Okay, so now that we have kind of an ADR settings, what we do is, and often what this will allow you to work with is multiple marker tracks. Now, marker tracks can be created from a CSV file, which is pretty typical. So here, if we wanted to actually switch between our different marker tracks, we could actually just kind of come over here and choose different markers. So say I want to go to my dialogue marker track. And what this is going to allow me to do is to come over and just say, and one of the other great things is there's actually just kind of a dedicated tool where you could actually like send all of the text, all the dialogue to like an iPad or to a different computer on a network. So, but if you're doing kind of basic marker, we could come over here and we could set up our different settings. So we could say, okay, in general, we want this to have a beep as a guide. We want the video. Do we want to have a swipe? Do we want to swipe to center? Do we want a countdown? Do we want to count up? And how do we want to do all of the monitoring? So we could say, okay, we want to come over here and we're going to practice. So if you watch the video, you can see the text directly embedded into the video. So you can say, okay, that's when you need to do the line. So, okay, the actor has their dialogue done. All right, they're okay. Let's come over here. Let's record. We recorded their line. Let's review it. All right, now if we wanted to go to a different record folder and have one folder for English dialogue, Dutch dialogue, Spanish, Portuguese, but we could just record directly at the same positions. And let's say, okay, we need to come over here. Let's go to the next scene. All right, actor B, you need to shout right at the streamer. Okay, and now let's go ahead and record that. All right, we'll review. So at this point, you could just go through entire, like hundreds and thousands of lines super fast because it's an actual, purpose-built ADR solution so that we could have all of that functionality. So, and again, we could just come over and there's, even a program where we could send all this to iPad if you need to make changes in a dialog, you could do that and it's automatically updated on the iPad or a laptop. Or if they make changes in the line, you know, the actor could make, if they make a change in a dialogue, they could change it there and it's automatically updated in the script. So I think for localization, it's just a matter of recording it to different tracks. And often these will be organized where you have like one folder will be all the dialogue tracks in English, Dutch, Spanish, French, Italian, etc. So that way you could easily localize content for different areas. So I think the best way of doing ADR dubbing is Nuendo because it is purpose built for that. All right, wonderful to see Pertti Komenen checking in from Finland. Thanks for being online today and joining us. Okay, so we see Desmond Lang, who had asked about the spectral layers in Cubase and being able to apply it. So let's say if I come over here, let's just okay, so now let's say if I want to apply a spectral layers change, so let's say if I come over here, open up spectral layers, and so let's say I did an edit. I wanted to take these particular frequencies and get rid of it. So as we play, and let me just take the loop off. So we hear kind of low rumble. Let me just undo that within spectral layers here. I'll make something a little. So I just want to take maybe the high frequencies here and we'll get rid of that. So as we play, so we did our spectral layers edit. So once I'm there, I go into the extension here and I just say make track extension permanent. And that would be all that you'd have to do. Sorry to make programs open. But just choose to make from the extension itself, choose to make it permanent. So again, just kind of, so once we have the track selected, you load up, you've done the edit, and then again, just come here, make track extension permanent, and that's all you had to do. Okay, reading through comments. Okay, so we had a question from Plentian, Siabanga, Makoba. It says, hi again, Greg. I want to save the tracks and import as track archives on, it says, on Yo example, route the audio track to group track so each instrument has instrument audio track routed to group track. Okay. So let's say I have an audio track, I have an instrument track, do pad shop. Okay, so let's say I want to now, we'll add a group track. Okay, so I think I want to save the tracks and import them as track archives. So let's say we have this audio track. We have, let's say, this track with... Okay, so what I want to do now is I'm going to select, so if I wanted to open these with the routing, and let's say even with an effects track, if we wanted to be the same thing, I would select all three of those tracks. Let's save it. We'll export selected tracks. Just make sure I did the right one. So export selected tracks. We could copy the media files or reference them if the media files aren't going to be moving around. So here I'll just reference, and we'll call this September 3rd. So now let's remove these projects here. Let's import a track archive. So you export selected tracks, import track archive. Let's see where I... Let me just check where I exported it to. Make sure I had the right path. Okay, I'm just going to put it on desktop. Okay, so we have new empty project, and we will import the track archive from the desktop. And here's the track archive. I will select all the tracks, hit OK. And now we can see that this is still routed to group 1. This pad shop is routed to group 1. So let me know if that's what you want it to do. All right, so we see from Unrealized says we're close but not entirely earning money. I'll try to make some screenshots and see if I can explain it better that way. Yeah, so please send them the screenshots to clubcubase@steinberg.de. Okay, so we see from Martin, question, what is a typical project layout for dubbing a film for different languages, and how can I manage that the video is only copied and not re-encoded? So if the video is copied and it opens up, then you don't necessarily have to worry about that because you're kind of using the particular video as a reference. But let's take a look, because I think this example that I showed in Nuendo has multiple languages, but I think it's often going to be just folders, where each folder will be different languages. So here, like we could see, like the voiceover in German or voiceover in English, but if you have a lot of different characters, often what you may see is, okay, we're going to have these tracks, like let's say these are our characters. I'm going to put these into a folder. So we'll just come over here and we'll say move to folder. And then we could call this English. And then, if we wanted to duplicate the folder, I can say let's duplicate this, and we want this to be French. So now, if we're done with all the English, so let's say we have all of our English done here of our dialogue. Now, so let's say we have all that done, and now we go to our French. Dialogue, and then we could say, okay, now we want this to be Spanish, so we could duplicate the track and Spanish. And then you could just, again, come right over here, say, okay, now we're working on Spanish. We have all the same tracks, and, we could put a different, Espanol after each one if you wanted to, but I think generally that's how it's done, is you could have each dialogue set to a new folder, and there could be different ways of doing it, but that's how I've seen it done a lot. And that way you can utilize the same markers to navigate around. And you could just, quickly go through all of your different localization that way. All right, so you see plenty in, it says continue. I want to import this track, and this is the track archive that we were looking at here. It says I want to import this track archive to each song I'm working on instead of creating 5 new tracks every time I work on the songs. For now, the tracks don't get correctly routed when I import. So make sure that you actually have, so as you saw, all the routing is automatically there, but you could also save this as, if it's always going to be the same and you want that for every single project, is, save it as a template. So if you come over here, we'll save it as a template. So again, go to your file menu, save as template. We will come over here and let's call it plenty in. So we'll hit OK. So now we'll close this project. We will go to a new project. We'll come over here. We see our plenty in template. I hit OK. We can define a new folder. We'll activate. And now, again, we'll check our routing. So every time that we start, so this track is going to group 1, this track is going to group 1 as well. So we see the output, so the routing is preserved. So if you want it for every single project, save it as a template, or make sure that when you save the track archive that you actually, don't forget to select the effect or the group channels when you export the selected tracks for the track archive. All right, so we see Frankie Fresh Music asks, is it possible to lock the faders of the mixer so you cannot accidentally change the faders when using an external controller? So if you have like your tracks set up, you know, what a lot of people will do is look, let's say, okay, we have, say, number of audio tracks, you know, is just have their tracks with automation in them. So let's say if I'm here and we go to our MixConsole, I have these tracks selected. So I will come over here. I'm just going to write. I'm going to link these channels. I'll put QLink. All right, so all of these tracks now have automation that's been written. So if you accidentally, unless you are specifically, let me just come here. So I'll just come here. So all tracks have an automation value. So unless you're specifically, you know, writing automation on that particular track, you know, it's going to kind of follow the particular automation. You know, we could lock the position, but we could also just come here and if you want to lock, you know, the automation parameters, you could do that as well. And then, so let's say we're in audio 13. I come over here, that you see those tracks will automatically not be adjusted. So you could come right here and just lock the parameter on the volume automation so it's not affected by a control surface. All right, so we see an active user asks, has Nuendo better performance on, I guess, is it LWO budget computers and Cubase 13 Pros? I think that you would find that the two programs would run, it's the same code base. I haven't noticed any difference between them when running identical projects. So I don't think you'll notice any performance variables. Okay, so we see from JB, does Steinberg have plans to make plugins like RetroLog as well as some of the effects plugins, resizable? Sometimes it's hard to read some of the VST, some of the parameters. It's kind of there's a lot of different aspects that could, you know, be affected for like vector graphics. I'm not a developer, but you know, it's not quite so easy just to, just stretch it, make it bigger and have it work across every different video card and have it work across different platforms as easily. So I believe that they are doing research on doing it. So we'll see what comes out. But you could always adjust the, you know, if you're on the Windows platform very easily, if you go to the preferences, and it's not on Mac OS, but if you go to general, you could adjust the high DPI scaling, so it might be easier to read. You know, the resolution that I'm running at is 1080p, which is 1920 by 1080, and I think that's a great resolution that I like. And I have my own visual problems, but I find that that's a really good kind of resolution to be working in Cubase. So. Okay. All right, so we see from Desmond Lang, it says, sorry, it's an unmix feature, I meant to say. All right, so we'll show you how to do this. I think I may have a project. Let's see if it's in recents. Okay. Okay, so let's say we have a project and we've done a Spectral Layers unmix. So we'll come over here. So what I want to do now is I'm going to drag the vocals from the layer here, drag it into the project. And then what I could do is just get my audio to bounce selection. And now it's just a normal plain audio file. Time, he never saying a word. I tried not to show it. She touched a nerve. What can I say to you? Never met. So try dragging the particular file over into the project window. It's still kind of playing back through Spectral Layers. And then try going audio to bounce selection, and now we could have like our drums broken apart here as so try that. Let me know if that's what you're looking for, Desmond. All right, let's scroll down to some other. All right, so we see Tim K just says, dang, 70% loyalty and got it this month, but luckily the sale goes on until October 9th. That was kind. So I think it's actually, it may go through September 25th, so kind of check. In America, that's what people use credit cards for. All right. Great to see Daniel checking from Croatia. All right, so we see Moritz Burrow says absolute bang for the buck now, or bang for the bug now. All right. All right, so we see Flyvy is going to help his dad with some yard work. That's a good thing to do. All right, so HSP products. How can I add noise to a kick sample to make it more suited to my context? I want to know the best way to sculpt noise by filter and pitch, etc. Okay, so let's say, all right, so we'll just do a new project here. Okay. So we'll start in Groove Agent here. So if we're using kind of included tools, do Groove Agent SE. All right, so let's go ahead and just find like a kick drum sample in a Groove Agent library. Okay, so let's say we want that, so we're going to drag this onto the pad. All right, but let's say I want to layer other elements of it. All right, so I want to take this particular track. Let's add an audio track. All right, on this audio track, let's just go to our plugins. We'll go to our inserts. Let's go under tools and let's find our test tone generator. All right, I'm just going to turn the volume down here. Okay, so let's say I want this to be noise. Okay, so I'm going to take this audio here. And let's add a group channel. Going to route that audio to the group. Let's now create our audio track with its input as the group. Okay, so I'll just call this track noise. Okay, so let's say now on this group track, I want to put maybe a filter plugin on it. Okay, so now I'm going to record. So let's say we stop. So we have like a filtered noise there. So I'm going to drag this sample. Let's just make it very short. And I'll just bounce the selections for the new length. And I'm going to drag it right on top. Right, so now we have two different samples. So what we want to do, we have a kick here, and it's broken down by velocity. So I have my noise. Okay, so what I want to do is instead of switching these with velocity, we're going to layer these two. So now both of those samples will be layered. So we could just easily combine your multiple sounds and drag it onto as it's and you could have up to, is it 32 velocity layers? So you have 32 layers right there. So if you want to, come over here and, edit different aspects of the samples, we could do that and drop it right in and just trigger that right from there. And if we wanted to adjust the tuning, so just a quick dirty example, but just drag different samples onto a pad in Groove Agent, layer it up, and at that point you could choose to layer the sounds as opposed to switching from velocities. So let me know if that's kind of what you were thinking to accomplish. All right, so we see 339 Lenny. Hello, Greg. I had a project that did not have so many tracks, around 30 with audio files and VSTs and a few plugins. The Cubase.cpr file is so big, 2 gigabytes, and it gave me an error when it's more. And above 2 gigabytes, it's not possible to save the project. So if you have later versions of Cubase 13, I think it came in like 1302 or 1303, it will automatically save it in larger file formats. So make sure that you had the latest Cubase 13 version, but they did update the file size on the project so you could work with larger projects. All right, so we have swap Swapnadeep Ghosh says, joined the Cubase family this month. Wish me luck. So congratulations on joining the Steinberg family. We hope to see you on more live streams. And please ask any questions along your Cubase learning journey, and we'd be happy to help you along. So I think you'll find us a great community. Thanks for joining today. All right, we have All About Music. Just says, hi, Greg, love from India. It's wonderful to see you on. All right, we have Joe from Rochester. Great to see you on, Joe. Hope you're well. Sorry, then my chat field just jumped. Okay, so Joe's question is, if I buy Absolute 6, do I get to keep my Halion 7 license when upgrading to Absolute? Also, if, for example, Halion 8 comes out, do I get to keep my 7? So yeah, if you buy, there's two different ways to do this. So Absolute includes Halion 7, the license of Halion 7. You can, if you purchase Absolute, which is an incredible deal currently on the loyalty promotion, you do get to keep your separate Halion 7 license. So you can keep your license and keep those independently. And it says also but one of the things you can do, so you can keep it independently, but you could also you could also upgrade from Halion 7 to Absolute and save, I think, even more money. I think even that is on sale. So if you upgrade it from Halion 7 to Absolute, as opposed to buying Absolute as a separate license, if you upgrade, then your Halion 7 license is kind of rolled into Absolute. If you purchase Absolute as a separate program, a non-upgrade from Halion 7, then your Halion 7 would be totally independent of the Halion. That you'd have two licenses, one that runs independently of Absolute. And it says also, for example, Halion 8 comes out, do I get to keep my Halion 7? So sure. When you buy Steinberg software, you actually own it. We think that's a good concept. I don't know many people that rent their guitars or subscribe to their guitars. So you could always keep your Halion 7 as new versions come out. Okay, Nexus asks, do you have to install all parts of Absolute or just what I need? Is Absolute a single license or many for each synth? So you don't have to install every part of Absolute. I think it's 130 gigabytes. A lot of people will do it in different stages. And it is a single license as opposed to a Retrolog license, a Patch Shop license, a Groove Agent 5 license, the Grand license. So it's one single license that will allow you to run all those different programs. All right, Swapnadeep Ghosh asks, how to import MIDI easily. So if it's a standard MIDI file, which is a common interchange format, what you could do is just simply come over here. We'll say import MIDI file. I think I may have one on my desktop. You can choose whether you want to create a new project or put it into the existing project. So I'll say no. Let's look for a MIDI file. And now here's my MIDI file that we just imported right there. So that's pretty easy. So you could just go to import MIDI file. And if you want to create a new project, so this time we'll create a new project. It'll ask you what folder you want that particular project MIDI file, the project to go into. And now here's our MIDI file. All right, so Swapnadeep Ghosh also asks, how to change BPM or pitch of a sample easily. Okay, so if we have a sample, I'll just go to this project here. All right, so if we want it to, so if we want to change the BPM, one of the things we could do is, let's say we'll listen to this file. So this is playing back this particular drum loop. If we want, we have our object selection tool. If you wanted to do it graphically, we could say sizing applies time stretch. And now we could say I need this audio file to fit into that amount of time. Now, if it is a drum loop, most audio loops will have something called musical mode. So if I take a loop, and Cubase will give you lots of incredible loops to work with. So let's say we'll come over here. Let's get to our loop mash library and let's look for, let's say, drum beats. Okay, so now I want to take this loop. Now we could audition this, and there's this little function in our browser here, our preview browser, where we could say align to project tempo. So now when I drop this in, it's going to place it into musical mode. So we see that this now automatically falls right into the BPM of our project. So we'll come here. I'll take off my loop. Now we could turn musical mode on and off directly from here. So this is the original tempo. But if we want this to align to the grid at our current tempo, we could select the event or multiple events and put it into musical mode. Now that's going to align to the grid. If we want to change the pitch, I could come right over here from the info line just to the left of musical mode. And we could change the pitch directly here for the audio as well. So let's say we'll just so now we could change our pitch, transpose it by semitones or by cents. So if you wanted to go to 1/100th of a semitone, we could adjust in using fine tune or using the transpose. So you could try directly from the info line, and if you want to graphically change an audio file to make it fit within a grid, or if it has metadata like BPM, use musical mode. All right, wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. It says it's raining at the studio in Weatherford, Texas. So. All right, so we see from Desmond, it says, can I do multiple tracks? So once you do the unmix, you could just drag multiple tracks out and do a bounce selection on them. We see Michael Teams is giving away the virtual ice cream. It's very generous of him. All right. Daniel asks, hey, dude, so I checked some laptops, the i7 and 16 gigs of RAM. There's some cheap ones and expensive ones. Got any advice for mid Cubase user? There's i7 8750, a 10700, 13700. Also, should I prefer any brand? I would just kind of check, kind of Google like each of those processors for DAWs or a specific model. Some companies will kind of, really tweak their performance. Like a lot of business laptops will be tweaked because, for low performance but long battery life. So sometimes people will get a lot of battery life by throttling the CPU, and that may not be, that could be kind of the exact thing that you don't want to happen. A lot of times when we're working, we may be plugged in when utilizing a DAW, we could be running on battery, but a lot of times, we'll have microphones and audio interfaces connected, and we may be, not recording. If we're doing vocals, we may not be outside in nature capturing sources. We may be in kind of a controlled environment where we're not running on battery. I would just do perhaps a Google search. If you want to email me, I'll tell you which particular processor I have in my 12-year-old i7. But I would just kind of check with people on forums and see what exactly they are utilizing and what they've had good luck with. And we see also from Daniel, just says, and also, can you work on a 15.6-inch screen? My eyesight is also not the best. So I think that you could, it's sometimes the screen size can go in conjunction with the screen resolution. So, but I generally have I've had 15-inch screens for a long time myself. All right, so we see unrealized sent the email, so I think I saw it coming. We'll see if we get to it in just a little bit. I have to kind of switch over some stuff to see the email. All right. All right, so PYC Music asks, hi Greg, how to copy multiple MIDI parts with CC controllers in editor to different place without leaving editor. I also found it only copies one part's data and others without. Okay, so let's say, just kind of create. All right, so I'll just kind of create something here quickly. All right. All right, so let me just draw some notes in here. draw in some modulation data. Okay, so I think we have, all right, so how to copy multiple MIDI parts with CC controllers in editor to different place without leaving the editor. Okay, so let's say if I'm here, so I think it might do it kind of one at a time. So let's say we want to look at velocity and modulation. Let's do main volume here. Take these and transpose them down. Okay, so let's say we're here. So you see kind of we have our strings here. So now when I take these particular notes and let's copy them. So I think it's going to be kind of one active part at a time. Let's just so I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key. And that moved over. So let's say now we want to switch. And let's say if I just have these as okay, so say cello, bassoon, okay. Okay. So now, let's say if when I select this, we'll see that I could copy this. And let me just make sure I have. All right, so I'm just going to say all parts on active track. So say now when we select this, we see our MIDI CC data. Now I make this the active one. We can see that our CC data is different. So let's say on our bassoon, we're just going to have our modulation dip. So now when I come here, so I think that each of these would have to be kind of copied. So let's duplicate that. So all of our CC data is here. Let's copy this. And then we can see that the CC data is copied, but I think if we try to do both at the same time, I think we may have to do one at a time, because we could have, let's try setting this to all parts. Yeah, so if you want to CC data, I think you'd have to kind of copy these like one part at a time. So now we'll see the CC data copy over, and then if I come here, that we copy this, and we'll see our CC data ramp down. So each one of those will have to be kind of copied separately. All right, so we see all about music, how to create very deep, lush kick drum samples in Cubase, ones that are used in Hans Zimmer movies. So I don't know exactly what it's called. So there is a kit in Groove Agent that if you want kind of those orchestral sounds, so a lot of it is like clever sound design. They do lots of sampling. I remember at one point Hans was doing, I think for Superman, he had 11 studio drummers go into one session and recorded 11 drummers at once. And I remember him telling me before, he's like this is gonna be the greatest thing ever. I'm gonna blow like 80% of my budget in one day. So but so he'll kind of take chances a lot, and he spend a lot of time doing pretty painstaking sound design. But if you want someone else to do like a lot of that hard work, check out, I think it's the scoring percussion, which is a Groove Agent expansion. But here you can kind of come over. Let's just, so if you wanted to have so you could almost do like entire. So like some of these for check out some of the scoring percussion. So there you kind of get like bass drums and timpani sounding things together. So lots of great content here. So different levels of intensity. So yeah, check out the definitely the scoring percussion set from Steinberg. So you can check that out. A lot of great content for that type of sounds that you're probably looking for. All right, so we have Niels Karig, just checking in from Germany. So you don't have to worry about being late. If you're late, you just have to immediately hit the like button. All right, sorry, my chat field jumped on me. All right, so we see Bratman Studio says, hey, Greg Rick here. Take advantage of Absolute 6, 70% off. Holy moly, this is the time to do it. $149. Filling my hard disk with loads of cool stuff. Thanks, Steinberg. That's great. Enjoy. See, Jazz Dude is only runs large monitors. He has 342-inch, 3 times. He has a 42, 42, and a 40-inch and a 32-inch. All right, so we have songs of the Ivy Brothers with Cubase Artist 11. How can I match the metronome to an imported audio track? So I think what you could do is, I'm not sure if Cubase 11, I think it has the Cubase Artist 11 might have the time warp tool. So let's say if I want to, I'll just import an audio file in here. So if you have the audio warp tool, I think it's in Cubase Pro obviously has kind of the automatic tempo detection. But I think what you could do in 11 is, let's say if we want to come over here, I'll just turn my snap off. So say we're going to start our downbeat here, and then we could go to your warp tool, and then there's a warp grid. So let's say if we wanted to, I will just zoom out here. So let's say we wanted to have our metronome on. All right, so probably right here is where measure 13 is. And what we could do is move measure 13 to be on the grid. So probably right here at this transient is where measure 14 should be. And what we're doing is basically making a tempo map. So if we open up kind of a tempo track, we could have slight adjustments here. So say, so every time you say, okay, measure 14 should be kind of right there. So we could do, basically we move the grid to match the file, to match the material. And you can create your own kind of tempo map that way. It's kind of a manual version of the tempo detection. So I think that that's in Artist 11. So give that a try. If not, you could just let me know. And then you could also use the the beat calculator as well. All right. All right, so Element asks, hey, hello, Greg. Is there a way to adjust the audio event color with a key command? All right, so let's say I want to assign a particular color to this event. So we could do that with the Project Logical Editor and save that as a preset. So we'll come over here. So let's say we want to take selected events. So we're going to transform media type. We're going to say our container type is going to be an event. Our property is going to be set to the event is selected. And then what we want to do, we're going to take selected events, and I'm going to come over here, and on the event transform actions, we're going to say set color. And we say set to fixed value. I'll say, okay, let's make it this color. And if the color has a name, you could do that. It's already kind of green. Let me make it red. So I could save this as a preset. And this preset, so let's go ahead and Okay, so if I want it to now, let's say we open up our project logical editor, I could just apply that preset. So we're going to say this is our selected event. And we could just change that color. So to trigger this from a keyboard shortcut, we would now go to your key commands. We would see under Process Project Logical Editor Colors. And then you could assign a key command here, and that would also populate in the that would also populate directly inside of the MIDI remote control assignable parameters as well. So you could just come right there. So again, just the settings, container type is event. We want to transform events that are selected. And we can say set to, if we will say set color, set to a fixed value, and then you could choose a color. And assign the keyboard shortcut, again under key commands, and then select it under Process Project Logical Editor. Select a preset and assign a key command. All right, HSP Products asks, what is the quickest method to transpose a MIDI track but before recording? Okay, so let's say we have a bassoon part here. All right, so let's say move it up an octave. So I'm playing just a C note. So what we could do is on this track, you'll see MIDI modifiers. I'll just make this a little louder here. And then I could just choose transpose right from the MIDI modifiers. So hitting the same note. So now if I record something here, I'll play a C. Then we go to look at the particular pitch, and we'll see that the pitch is set to C, but it'll play back at B flat. You could also just come over here to MIDI and choose freeze MIDI modifiers, and then that will transpose it to its actual pitch of B flat. So try just coming right over here and MIDI modifiers, and you'll see transpose right there. All right, wonderful to see Randy Lee on from Texas, and he asks, Greg, can you show how to link Cubase to Wavelab? I forgot the link process. All right, so let's say I want to take this file here. There's a couple of different ways. One is just to say, go to the audio menu and we say edit in Wavelab. So I have the file selected, now Wavelab launches, and we could do our edits. And then once we do our edits, we can come over here. So let's say I get rid of this. And then we could just click on this little icon here. And then we could just kind of go back and forth. So I think it's this one that triggers the Cubase Nuendo update. So when I click there, we go back, let's say to Cubase. So that's one way of kind of doing it, and we can see where I made that cut right there. That is automatically done. Now with the Wavelab 12, what's cool about it also is we could also run this as an ARA extension. So if I select the event here, we go to extensions. We can say, let's go to Wavelab ARA. So now when I double click, I'm basically running the Wavelab sample editor from within Cubase. I could also, so let's come over here, we'll say no extension. A third method would be if I want to take this particular file and we could choose to, let's say I want to take just a small section of it for time expediency. What we could do now is when we go to export audio mix down, you say, okay, I want to do my stereo mix, and then after export, we could say open in Wavelab 12. So we'll just say, so now I export the audio file, it's going to export it, it's going to open it in Wavelab 12 where I could do other edits. So I could do an export audio mix down. I could choose to run it as an ARA extension, and that's with version 12. Or earlier versions I could select, go to my audio menu, and choose Edit in Wavelab. All right, Michael Teams has granted my family, myself, 1 gallon of limoncello ice cream. All right, and he says he took advantage of Absolute 6. He forgot to program with the big Oberheim/Jupiter voices. Do you remember? So I think it's Rasta. So when you come over here, and I don't think that's inside of Absolute, but let's say we'll come over here to Howling in Sonic, and we'll scroll down to Rasta. So if you want kind of these kind of classic so check that one out. It's always good. All right. Okay, so we have Akil T. Just says, hi, I'm unable to hear the output of the audio track that I'm recording. I can monitor it, but can't hear it after I pause recording. All right, so make sure that, like, if we record something, so let's say I'm going to play this track here, and so I'm going to record this I'm going to send it to a group and just do a quick internal recording. All right, so you don't have to worry about this part. All right, so I'm going to record and monitor with this. All right, so now let's say I wanted to listen to this file. You may not hear it if the record enable is still turned on. Then it's just monitoring the incoming signals. So make sure that this button, the monitor button, is turned off. Otherwise, you won't hear what's been captured. So if you see the waveform, but you're still not hearing it, just make sure that this particular monitor, because that monitor button is monitoring the incoming signal and not playing back the file that's on the particular track. So let me know if you have the monitor button turned on, and that could be causing kind of what you describe. Okay. All right. So Gerald Ely, let me just clear my throat. Hang on. Gerald Ely asks, I too own Halion 7. Can I use the 70% voucher if I upgrade to Absolute 6 from Halion 7? So I believe so, but let's take a quick look just to make sure. So let's say we will buy Absolute 6. We want to cross grade. So if we have Halion 7, so it's normally $249. So if you own Halion 6 or 7, or patch, if you own one of these as a separate license, you could get it in the US, and when you go to your country, you'll see the local currency for your country. But here you can see it for $174. Makes it even more of a steal, I think. So that way you upgrade your Halion 7 license into Absolute 6 and save an additional $70. And you still have your Halion 7 as part of as part of Absolute 6. All right, so we see from Uno Memento, who says, Steinberg download assistant does not open if I don't have the dongle plugged into the computer. Should it be so? I would think that it would be independent in that it should open, but it may not allow you to upgrade or transfer a particular license. But I would think that it would still be able to open up. So. Okay. All right, so see, I'll be getting some new songs played bass 2 with Michael Team from Michael Teams. Looking forward to it. All right, so Recyclop says, hello from Finland. Is there a way to create a feedback loop within Cubase Pro 13, as in send effects track onto itself? If not, is there a workaround? So generally we prevent the idea of creating feedback loops. People would sue us for, I created a feedback loop and then my speakers blew up. Stuff like that happens. So we, prevent feedback loops from occurring, which I think makes sense. But if you wanted to kind of create some type of feedback loop, what you could do is, I would maybe investigate even a plugin kind of like the multi-tap delay. So because you could do kind of routing within the plugin. So even if you're not doing a delay per se, or FX modulator would be kind of another one, because each of these we could send. So let's say we want our delay time, if you don't want a delay, but here you could add entirely different modules. So we could say, okay, I want the delay to go into a phaser, into a vibrato, into flanger, and then for the tap effects we could have a whole other range of different modules. So I think that if you really wanted to, you could get these to kind of feedback. But as a rule of thumb, we work hard to prevent the capability of creating feedback loops. Okay, Michael Teams asks, how to back up an entire project for your archive. Okay, so if you want to back up, so let's say I have this particular project here and I got some audio files and everything, I would just go to your file menu and choose backup project. And here it's going to prompt you for kind of like a new particular folder. So let's say, okay, I want to come here. Let's do a new folder called Delete Me on my desktop. So now I'm going to click here. We're going to give it a name. Say delete me. It'll ask us, do we want to minimize audio files? So if we are only using 5 seconds of a 15-minute recording, we don't have to back up the 14 minutes and 55 seconds of non-used audio. We could make direct offline processes permanent. We could remove unused files. We could choose to or not to back up the video or the mixdown folder. So when I hit OK, it's going to back this up, create it into a new project. Let's go to my file menu. I'll go to my desktop. We're going to find delete me. And then that would, let me just search by. Let's put it into a different folder, but at that point you could now just simply open up that folder. So again, just come here to backup project, and then from there you can choose a new folder and some options for including or excluding different aspects of it. All About Music asks, if I cast my laptop screen on an external projector screen, will there be a visual/audio lag while using Cubase? So yeah, there will be, usually, even using Bluetooth headphones, you'll notice kind of it's about 43 milliseconds of latency. So, whether it bothers you or not could be one thing. Some people can self-compensate, but I wouldn't imagine that would be a latency-free scenario. All right, so wonderful to see Graham Witcher checking in from Oxford. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so HSP Products asks, I used Halion 7 trial, and after I bought it, but the Steinberg activation, I see 2 Halion 7s, still asking to buy it because the trial period has expired. Same thing with Cubase Splice. So I think if you go into your activation manager that you could choose, let's take a quick look. So let's say I have this. Let me just let it fully. So, but I think that maybe if you go to the not activated section, that let's say, but you might be able to, and I'm not, so I think, as long as you have your Halion 7 license, you should still be able to run it. I'm not sure how the Splice license works, if you fully paid for the Splice license or if you are still running this Splice license and in the middle of paying for it, it might have different results. All right, so Daniel asks, Greg, I can save some money if I choose integrated graphics card. Will that affect Cubase? So if you're doing mostly laptop-based, I think it's pretty much all going to be kind of integrated graphics cards. So, and some, you might be able to run GPUs on later laptops, but you should be fine with that. Generally the graphics card, you don't need a special graphics card for running Cubase, and often fancy graphics cards designed for gaming purposes can affect real-time audio performance. Okay, so we see all about music. Can we create the sound of a lash in Retrolog? So I think you asked this last time about like a whiplash sound. So I'm not sure if you want like almost like a whip, or maybe if you could send me an example of the sound. If you send me like a link that I could listen to it to Club Cubase at steinberg.de, I'd be happy to see if I could recreate that. All right, so we have a question from Plentian. It just says, another question: how to transfer my project from PC to Cubasis so I can mix on Cubasis and transfer back to PC. So I don't think we could export to Cubasis, because there's a lot of functions and features and capabilities that are in default Cubase that aren't in Cubasis. So we could export from Cubasis, and a lot of people use that as the starting, like, okay, I have my iPad or my Android tablet, my phone, inspiration has struck, I'm going to capture something, I'm going to work on it in Cubase, and maybe when I go to mix, I want to do that in the full Cubase. So we can go from Cubasis to Cubase, but not Cubase to Cubasis, because there's a lot of functionality, a lot of elements within the project that may not be able to be translated. All right, Indrop asks, hi Greg, is it possible to use the logical editor to create a macro / shortcut to open or create a specific VST instrument track, for instance, Groove Agent? So currently there isn't a way that I know of to have a track automatically open. What a lot of people will do just for like a quick thing is, even if you go here to, like, let's say your VST instruments, and you say, okay, like directly from the media bay, you could just kind of drag and drop to add, or just say, okay, I want a pad chop sound, and we could go through all the presets and double click and load the instruments that way. But I don't know of a way to actually load a specific plugin from from the logical editor, project logical editor, unfortunately. All right, so we see DaVinci Girl just asked Greg, did you find time to listen to the it says biauricular demo? Did not receive an answer. So I listened quickly to it. I didn't have headphones after the live stream, but I listened to it, and I thought it was like really interesting. And we see follow-up question: what's the best approach to mix from stereo to biauricular, maybe binaural, maybe? And can you explain this, how this anniversary works? I really do not understand the offer of Cubase 12 Pro. All right, so with the anniversary, so if you have Cubase 12 Pro, you could update to Cubase 13 Pro for half off. So the update would be discounted. If you have another program, if you have and there's also, if you look into your My Steinberg account, you should see different vouchers. So if you have like Cubase 13 Pro, I think you need the latest versions. I could be mistaken, but look in your My Steinberg account. So if you have Cubase 13 Pro, you could get a program like Dorco for 70% off, or Absolute, or Wavelab. So there's different loyalty vouchers for people that are running, I think, the latest and the higher versions of the programs to take advantage of. So to celebrate the 40th anniversary. All right, and a question about best approach to mix from stereo to, binaural. So let's say if I want to do that, let's see if I have this project still up. So I will generally kind of treat it as, let's say if I have my guitar part, and I usually do the ADM project setup. So if you go to your project to ADM authoring and kind of go through the setup assistant. And then once we have that, and if we have, then once I have come over here, and we go to our ADM authoring. So when we look at this, we can see we're going to have our panner. But as we kind of do the setup for it, let me you know, if we click here, we could actually just choose now to, as we are doing our down mix preset, so how we're monitoring. Are we monitoring in a real 714 or 51, or are we monitoring with headphones binaurally? So if you click right here on, you will get this setting, and then you could just choose binaural right there. All right, wonderful to see Best Korean Jesus on. I hope you were able to take advantage of the Absolute 6 sale. I know you were anxiously waiting. See Best Korean Jesus getting it on Friday. All right, so we see Roland Stuff says, belated thanks, Greg, for answering my earlier question about extracting MIDI from Very Audio. You're welcome. Glad to help. All right, so we see Randy Lee just saying, Greg, thanks. This is probably about the Wavelab link. All right, so Space IS Water says, Cubase, you're a Jedi of Steinberg products. Thank you so much for making these live streams on questions and answers. So I'm just happy to be able to help people, and thank you for the kind words. It's very kind. All right, so DaVinci Girl just says, but Halion has close to no free or external libraries. I still see no reason for Halion use as my main sampler. You don't have to use it as your main sampler, but there's lots of wonderful instruments inside of Halion, and I think that the sound design capabilities are really second to none. All right, Volker Schmoll asks, what's going on here? I like it. So what we do, we've been doing this kind of since COVID started. I think the first one, we kind of ramped it up on March 17th of 2020, and we just answer questions about your Steinberg products in Cubase. So, and it's called a Club Cubase live stream, and it's whatever questions you have on Steinberg products you ask, and we'll try to give you an answer and help you along and explain kind of thought processes or workflows. All right, so we see from Samuel, it says, hi, Greg. Hi, all. Could we have the possibility to create multiple versions and automation curves, for example, in a VCA track? All right, so let's come over. All right, so say we have this, and just swap out my. All right, so I'm going to link this, and we'll use a VCA fader. Okay, so we have a VCA fader here. So I'm not sure if you've tried, so we have different automation drawing tools. So say we have our VCA here. So let's come over, and if I wanted a parabola, we could just kind of draw in a parabola, or if we wanted to do triangle waves or sine wave. And if we want to kind of change the frequency, we can hold down the shift key. So even though it's on a VCA fader, if that's kind of what you want to do, you could just kind of come over, and if you want that to be kind of synced to the tempo, we could do stuff like that. And then we could also just select all of these, and if we wanted to bring them down or truncate. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to do, but you could use the standard drawing tools, the line tool here, to draw in different shapes. And then even if we have, let's say, just more of a straight point here, even though it's on the VCA, we could do Bezier curves as well, just kind of like that. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to see, or if I'm misunderstanding. All right, so Mike Braley asks, any idea if Spectral Layers Pro will be part of the 40th birthday sale? I don't see it in my vouchers or online store. So Spectral Layers just had a promotion, I think, in July. So they kind of stagger out the promotions. So I think it was a 50% off in July for Spectral Layers. So because they just did it a couple months ago, that's why it's, they try to vary the product portfolio of different options that are available for promotion. So okay, so All About Music, thanks for sharing the Lash sound samples via email. All right, so Volker just says sometimes uses the micro EQ from Alesis, built in August 1989. That was kind of the Alesis heyday years, that they had a lot of good stuff going on between like 89 and 95. They did a lot of great stuff. All right, so Benny asked, question, going to build a 5.1 now, has HS7. What do you think about HS3 behind? If you could at all do it, if you're going to do like a 5.1 room, if you could afford to do if you could afford to have all the same speakers, that would make a lot of sense, I think. And if I understand that there's budget constraints, and the HS3s are much less expensive, but they don't have individual power amps. So I think that cosmetically they may look a lot like the HS5s, HS7s, the HS8s, but conceptually I think they're kind of a bit different. So if you had to go with something smaller for your surrounds, I would go with HS5s, because each of those speakers has their own power amp. Because with the HS3s or HS4s, at that point, only one speaker has a power amp, and then you have to have a cable that gets connected to the other one. So that's one thing to be aware of. So if I had to, I would say that the tonality between the 5s and 7s were a little more consistent. But if you could have all the same speakers, that would be ideal. All About Music says, can we use tools like ChatGPT or Copilot to use Cubase? So I haven't done anything with that, so I don't think that there's anything that Steinberg has done for compatibility with that. But, so I'm not super aware of any integration, but I haven't experimented with Copilot or ChatGPT personally that much. Okay, so Samuel on the VCA says, okay, thanks, Greg. Can we have multiple version of tracks like the lanes for audio? All right, so I think that once we send, so we don't have track versions on VCAs because there's no media that's associated with it. And when we automation is kind of independent of, so we could think of the track versions as primarily for being the media that's played back with the same track settings. But let's see if I could add. But we could send a VCA, to another VCA track. So these, so this VCA could control this, but if you want it, so it's not really, like automation generally isn't so much like dynamic automation isn't something so A-beable, but let's say if I come here and I wanted to take all these, let's copy, and let's say if I just want to come and I could paste it into a different location, like a holding place if you wanted to, and then we could mute this, so you might be able to not have this take effect, but you could still take the data and then copy and paste between the two VCA tracks if needed. But it's not really designed for that, but I think you could do that probably as a workaround. All right, so we see a question. Does the Halligan trial come with the Iconic orchestra? So probably Iconica. So there's a trial version for Iconica and a trial version for Halligan. So they're two separate different trial versions. You could run them together, get them on the same day. I think they're both 30-day trials. All right, so a question, is it possible to make the words on cycle markers bigger? So they are kind of a fixed size. I kind of wish they were a little larger myself. So let's come over here, activate this project. So if we have a marker track, and if you wanted to see them larger, so it's going to be, so I could see where it can make sense to kind of utilize the whole space, but some people will have markers very small. But if you wanted, you could just kind of click here, and then you could see kind of the marker descriptions. I think it's just Control or Command plus the letter M for marker, and then you could see the descriptions pretty large here. And if you want to navigate to different markers, you could do it like so. But it's currently kind of a fixed size on the project window. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we see all about music. Just says, what's the difference between different envelopes in Retrolog? Okay, so let's come over here. Let me just... All right, so let's say... All right, so let's say we wanted to have kind of our... So I guess it's going to be... So this would be kind of the overall envelope. So let's say now we can see that the attack is very slow. And if I wanted to release, like when I let go of the mouse, for that to sustain longer. So this is more of our traditional envelope for the sound. And we can think of this envelope here as more for the filters. So let's say if we are here, let's... So now I want the attack of the filter. You know, so at this point, this is going to be for the filter section, and this will be like our traditional amplifier section. So now when I... So if I wanted this to, as soon as I have a slow, I let go of the mouse, the release will continue on. This is going to affect more of just the filters and how the envelope for the filters. Uh, 808 King asks, hi Greg, what is the best way to export the final mix at the end? Real time or just regular nothing as a .wav file? So I don't think that there's going to be, you know, what's being compiled is going to be the same exact information. If you're incorporating external instruments or external effects processors like compressors, EQs, or reverbs, that would obviously have to be done in real time because the signal is being processed in real time through those units. But there's no discernible difference audibly between the different, whether it's real time or not. Some people used to assume that real time was better because some early systems that were in the market couldn't do quicker than real time. So they would have to, because it would have to process the audio through the DSP in real time. So there's kind of a myth that that is a more accurate way, but it's really just a software design limitation of a particular DAW that was widely used and is really kind of doesn't make any difference. So. All right, Catherine Leduc asks, hi Greg, what are the differences between the different Iconica versions? Any chance to see discounts sometime? So Iconica has been on sale, I think, twice this year on different promotions. So kind of, just keep your eyes out. There will probably be like right around, my guess would be around, after, there's probably going to be a cyber deals thing, probably after like Thanksgiving, Black Friday time. There's probably a lot of promotions that go on around then. So that would be a good time to look. But when we look at our different Iconica versions, so we'll just come over. All right, so we have Iconica Sketch. Iconica Sketch is kind of a scaled down version of Iconica that comes with Cubase. So it's, a lot of individual instruments, but something very easy to start your composition with if you're doing orchestral stuff. So really high quality. It may not have as much control over the placement of the Decatree and the mic position and how much of the mic, the Decatree mic blended versus the other one, and maybe not as many round robins, but a great sound set. Now you also have Iconica sections and ensembles, and we could think of these as being, when we open this up, that these are going to be like brass sections. And then we could just kind of come over here and say, okay, let's, if we want to bring in, or I wanted to have a whole ensemble of a cartoon orchestra. So these will be different instruments that are often layered together in typical ensemble formats, so that if you just want like a great string section, so you say, okay, I want high accented sustain. So instead of having to create and say, okay, I want my violas, violins, ones and twos, and create those, that we can just come over here and have this ensemble already set up. Now, when we want to have the individual players, that's when we would go to the Iconica sections and players. So these would be all of our different articulations, including percussion, euphonium, you have celeste, and these would be all of the typical individual instruments, like you're building each instrument from, as you would like an individual person. So we could think of that. So Iconica ensembles would be like groups of musicians that are kind of assembled and mixed together for you, so that you don't have to manually create it. Just a great time saver. And then you have the Iconica opus, which is the combination of sections and players and ensembles. So that is kind of both of those. In every copy of Cubase, you get the Iconica sketch. So you could get started and you're like, oh, I wish I had more, a few more variations on this sound, or which controller I want to use. Then, you could outgrow the Iconica, the included Iconica, the sketch, and then kind of, jump up to the full Iconica. And thanks for the kind words on the live streams, Catherine. And it's great to see you on again. All right, All About Music asks, is it possible to customize the tooltips when hovering on any button? So they're going to be fixed and programmed in. So, these will often kind of show you exactly, what a particular function does, but, I'm not sure if it makes a lot of sense to customize that or have that level of control. So I don't know, I can't think of any programs. I'm sure that there are some that, has customizable tooltips. I think, most people are happy to have a tooltip to give hey, what does this icon do? And then you could just kind of hover and say, oh, this opens up the input transformer. Oh, okay. So. All right. So we just have Jazz Dude just says, can you fire up the Iconica sketch demo and play like 2 or 3 minutes so people get a clue how great it is? So I'll play just like a Schubert piece. I'm not sure if I have the full Iconica sketch. There's kind of one they could download, but I'll play just a minute of Schubert piece. I think it's Fifth Symphony, B flat, second movement. Many people heard this on my live streams before, but just kind of give you an idea. This is really not even tweaking anything, just so you could listen to. So you get an idea from that. And that's really not even tweaking anything or really dialing in articulations. It's just kind of playing. So I wish I had that when I was starting off in college, having sounds like that. Then that's the Iconica sketch that comes with Cubase. All right, we have Michael Pierce checking in from Rome. We hope you're having a good time. I'm clear my throat. Thanks for checking in. Okay, so we see 808 King. Okay, but I use audio tracks and some instrument tracks with effects on both. So just export my final mix regular, not real time. If you want to export it real time, like sometimes we realize that people get paid by the hour, and if you have a client there, and you have a 15-minute song, you could tell them that you're doing it real time and get paid for a quarter of an hour for watching the screen. But yeah, no difference. If you're using external MIDI, so let's say you're using something like a montage and you're using sounds in a montage with Cubase, at that point, then it would be like a real time mixdown. But with instrument tracks, no. Software instruments, no. All right, so we see from Plentian, who asked, thanks a lot, Greg, for all your answers, but don't remember if editing multiple, please show how to record audio over and over on one track, and then separate each recording to its own track. Okay. All right, so I add an audio track here. Okay, so if we wanted to record kind of we'll do multiple recordings here. I'll just do like a one measure loop. We'll put it into cycle, and I will take the click track off so it doesn't annoy everyone. All right, so let's say we have pass one. Now these will be one audio recording, so even if I stop and let's say we're going to record again, we'll stop, record again, or we do it in cycle mode. Every time that we do recording, this could end up as a different lane. Now how we view the lanes is we click right here on this particular button. So every recording we have different lanes. Now if we wanted to take these lanes and take each of these lanes as audio tracks, so right now they're all on this one track, so all the processing, all the EQs and effects are all on that one particular track. But if I now kind of have the lanes open and we right click, we could say create tracks from lanes. Once we've done that, now we can see all these tracks, and why this certain ones are white is because they are muted as they were originally. So now we could have the individual tracks. So once you've recorded multiple parts on the track, you could shift and select the top and bottom, and then choose to create tracks by right clicking, create tracks from lanes. All right. Brian Sawyer Sr. just says, how do you bounce audio to MIDI? Or how do you bounce MIDI to audio? All right, so that's kind of what we could do as a render in place. So let's say I have this particular file here. So I want to turn that into audio. So this is where render in place does it really well, because we can just go to your edit and let's say let's get to our render in place. I could choose, if this was like multiple parts that we had selected, we could choose to do those separately or as one event. We could choose which type of processing, whether we want it to be dry, if we had effects, If we had send effects like inserts and channel EQ, channel strip, send effects plus master, and then we could just come right over here and say render. And now when we play this back, this audio file, we could have the original source track muted so it's not playing back. So now we can see that this event was muted so that it's not playing at the same time that the audio version is. So we could render the selected event, or if no event is selected, we could render an entire track as well. So again, just select either the track or the event. And if we have the track selected, we get a couple of additional choices that we could choose to mute the source tracks, or I could say remove the source tracks. So I don't need the MIDI information anymore, never want to see it again. I could just remove the source tracks, and then it's just automatically replaced with an audio file. All right, so we see from Soren, who's made it back. So if editing multiple MIDI parts in one window and by mistake click on the wrong note, how to lock to one part editing. Okay. All right, let's go. All right, so let's say we have like our flute and we want to do our viola. So we'll come here. So we'll say flute, violin 2. Okay, so we have these particular events. So again, you know how, like, so right now when I click on a particular voice, this makes it kind of the active part. And when we click here, this will make, this is our violin 2, this is our flute. So when I'm doing edits here, and if I'm editing velocity data, I'm only editing on this particular voice. And when I now select a different voice, I could just kind of come right here. So we could pick and choose exactly which parts that we are editing just right here, and then that's not going to affect the other part. All right, All About Music asks, can anyone join the Zoom video Hangouts? Yes, anyone is welcome to join. It's always great to see new people on. But anyone can join, and hopefully we'll see you next time on the Zoom Hangout. And we do it the last live stream of the month. We go for about 2 hours and then go straight to the Zoom video. We call it like the Club Cubase Zoom Social. And we hope to see you on September's with many other people. All right, reading through comments. All right, so we have a question from Val Y42. How to send only the left channel to a send and a right channel to another. Okay. Let's see if I have this file. Okay, so let's say I'm going to have a guitar and I want to have different effects in the left and right channels. All right, so let's say. So I'm going to add 2 effect sends. I'll just go ahead and take this reverb away here. So we'll show from scratch. Okay, so we have guitar. And I want, let's say, a delay in the left channel. So I'm going to add an effects channel track. So let's add a mono delay. I'll just put that in. So, and let's add another effect. So let's add, let's say, a flanger, something annoyingly obvious. All right, so we go to modulation, to flanger. Okay, so we have two different effects. I'm going to open up this channel. So I'm going to add my, let's say, my delay. And what I want to do is we see this panning tab. So now we could pan the echo just on the right side, the delay on the right, or just on the left side. So let's go to my destination here. And now I want to add the flanger. I go to the panning. Now the flanger is only on the right-hand side. So if we go to our stereo out, we don't hear the delay when we pan it to the right. We hear the flanger. We pan all the way to the left. We don't hear the flanger, but we hear the delay. And then we could pan in the middle and hear both. So for every effect send, we can now just click on under where we see destination, so we see where the send is going to. And then we could have independent panning for each of the sends as well. All right, see Sable is asking how everyone is doing today. All right, All About Music says, visiting India anytime soon. I would love to. I had the Steinberg distributor in India. We kind of met up on a Microsoft Teams meeting, and he's talking about maybe sometimes that he would like, he mentioned he would like to invite me to India for some seminars. I would love to go, but we just had to figure out who pays for it, kind of stuff. So, but I would love to go to India. Never been. All right, we see Michael Teams, his solo album is almost finished, so that's good. And Chaz dude brought up a point a little while ago that the Iconica sketch was actually, or Iconica was actually, we did it in conjunction with Orchestral tools in Berlin, and all the orchestral samples were done at their Berlin Funkhaus. I think that's the name of the studio. It's kind of the Abbey Road of Germany, from what I've been told. All right, so we see The Hot Mess just sending a quick hello to me and to everyone. So that's great. Looking forward to doing some bass parts for Michael and Hot Mess. All right. All right, so I know we had some more questions that were sent in, so let me get to those. All right, so we had a question. This came up on the Club Cubase Zoom social from Jay from Secret Studios. He says, would you be so kind to show how we may create a project logical editor presets which can target plugins within custom plugin folders? So I think what he wanted to do was to open up the plugin interface from a project logical editor preset. All right. All right, so let's say we have a lot of different instruments here. So we have a synths folder, and here we have a silky lead. We have a pad shop, another pad shop instance. Always some amazing sounds in pad shop. And then let's say I have this one. It's called Hallian Sonic that has this patch called Arcade and Anima, which is part of the Absolute deal. Another pad shop. So we have a number of these particular instruments, and so I'm going to have these closed. So let's say I have a subfolder within a subfolder, and I have another track selected. So I want to open up the instrument or the track Hallian Sonic that's named Hallian Sonic. So we'll come over here to here. Under more synths, we want to open up the instrument for this particular track. And again, it's not going to be selected. So let's go to our project logical editor. Okay, so we're going to do a preset condition where we're going to unfold all of the tracks. Okay. Then we're going to we're going to choose to select, and we want to select a track named Hallian Sonic. The name equals Hallian Sonic. And then afterwards, what we want to do is we're going to edit the VST instrument, and we're going to refold those tracks for us. Now I could assign this to a key command or to a function in the MIDI remote editor. So now when I hit apply, you can see that that Hallian Sonic track, the instrument on that track is automatically opened for us. So again, with everything closed as it is, I can say open up Groove Agent, open up a track named this. So if you're working with particular instruments within your template, again, we want to unfold all the tracks. We're going to select the track named Hallian Sonic, edit the VST instrument, and then close the project. So it's just all automated, just like that. Love that sound. It's awesome. So you could just create a project logical editor just like that. All right, next question. I know you've answered similar questions before, but I'm still not 100% sure about this. Let's say I have 3 snare samples routed to a snare bus. They're all reverb sends on 3 separate snares. That bus is routed to a drum bus, also a parallel bus. Those 2 buses are routed to an instrument bus. The instrument bus is routed to the stereo out. What I'm trying to say is when there are multiple buses like this in this example, how do you render the whole drums package, including everything? 1, except for the drums on the instrument bus and the stereo bus. 2, except for the plugins on the stereo out. All right, so let's say I have my snares here. So the snares, I have these routed to my drums bus. I have the drums. I have these also routed to my drums parallel. And I think in this example, I don't think it'll make much of a difference. I'm going to add a snare bus. I didn't add. So I'm going to add one more bus in between. So I'm going to add a group channel, and we'll call this snare. All right, so now I want to take this track and we're going to route it to our snare group, this to our snare group, this to our snare group. Our snare group is going to go parallel into, with its sends, into drums, and drums parallel. And I'm just going to check. All right, and I have effects that are on these. All right, so I have effects. So we listen to, let's say, our snare, and I put a delay on one of the snares. All right, so right now these are all going into the snare. All right. And then we have our delays, and these delays, I'm going to route these out to my, so we look at this, we go to, let's say, our drums and our drum bus, so we're going to send these to both. And so these are going to my drum groups. The drum group is going to my instruments. Now, as we do rendering, and this would kind of give us the same results whether we're doing our export audio mixdown. So if I wanted to include the effects and I had to set to multiple, I could take my drums, or I could actually just take my drum group and we could say, and we go to effects, we could say, let's do disable dry. That would just render the snares by themselves. If we choose groups, if we choose inserts and channel strip, my inserts would be on, and did any of the channel strip and EQs. If we choose any effects that we want CSP, that would include the sends, and then we could include the actual master effects as well. So if I wanted to just render this and put it into, so I'm going to say let's include all of my groups and sends, so we'll hear the delay, and I'm going to put it into create a new audio track. So as soon as we do this, it's going to take my drum group, and as we do this, so we'll just, so that's all of the different effects. Now, if we, let's say I put something super annoying on my master bus here, like a ring modulator, because every snare track needs that. If we wanted to do something very similar, but use render in place, I could select like the events or the tracks. So I'm going to select these particular events, and let's come over to render in place. I'm going to go to my render settings, and kind of very similar, we have dry channel settings. We could think of this as the EQ and inserts. We could include our complete signal path, which would be our sends included, and also with the master effects. So, and I'm going to choose to mix down to one file. I'll hit render. And now when we play this, we have everything included. Hang on 1 second, I have someone at my door. All right, sorry about that. So you could choose to do the routing, and again, have multiple stages, but the different effects processing can really, make a difference depending on what you want to include or exclude based on the choices that you have here for the processing. Okay, another question mailed in. If I understand correctly, adding plugins, question about direct offline processing. If I understand it correctly, adding plugins there won't use any computer processing power, but you're still getting all the regular options, undo, changing settings, and so on. I can't see any negatives at all other than having to use the uninspiring offline processing. The uninspiring offline processing window. If there are no negatives of doing it that way, wouldn't it be much better to automatically add offline processing to all edits without affecting the current workflow? I mean, adding inserts, sends, everything just as usual, but it wouldn't use any computer processing power. So it could depend. So offline processing isn't really going to, it takes kind of a static value. So we do an offline processing. So if you know you're going to be using the same compression settings, the same EQ settings, then that works really well. A lot of people would choose just to run it in real time so that they can just, it's a little easier to make and tweak changes as a project or a mix evolves. Where the offline processing doesn't do as well as real-time processing, maybe the more traditional manner, is when we get into where there's a lot of changing of different parameters. So if you're doing automation on different effects parameters, or you have like an LFO on different effects parameters, stuff like that, that's not kind of a static value for the processing, then automation would make more sense. So offline processing, if you have a slow computer, can make a lot of sense. And if you're doing particular workflows, if you're like really into post-production and you know that every dialogue needs these particular effects, I need a de-esser, I need this compressor, I need it set to this exact level and loudness, I need to take these particular frequencies out every time for this show, then you could just simply use direct offline processing. But if you're doing like a lot of volume automation, if you are automating a lot of plugins, then running it the more traditional manner makes more sense for those particular workflows. I think it's probably faster to just, open up if you were just kind of building a mix quickly, while you do have the capability of undoing any offline processing. I think the typical workflow in a mix isn't kind of offline processing based. I think a lot of people could benefit from doing offline processing, but how people kind of approach a mix, I think, isn't in an offline manner, but you could still do it if needed. All right, let's jump back to our live questions. Thanks, Indigo. You sent questions in to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right. See, the hot mess says, enjoy the hangout in Greg's giant brain. My head isn't that big. All right, and we see that there's a hot mess double single release on Friday. Looking forward to that. George wants to know who swatted me again. All right. All right, we'll see if there's any more. I think I'm at the end of questions. We'll see if there's any other questions that sneak in. We'll give it, there's usually like a 20 to 30 second pause between when I talk and when you guys hear on the live stream. If not, we will go ahead and wrap up again a little early, wrap up about 10 minutes early. I want to thank everyone for all the great, wonderful questions. I hope that everyone's learned a new tip or trick. If you have, make sure that you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Oh, I see I got 6 trophies from Michael Teams. It's very kind. But I appreciate everyone taking time out of your day to learn more about Steinberg products. If you are a Steinberg user, check your vouchers folder. There's a chance that you have like really heavy discounts on some other Steinberg products that you may not own, or you can simply upgrade or get new Steinberg products for 50% off in celebration of Steinberg's 40th anniversary. Can't believe it's been 40 years of Steinberg. It's been an amazing company to watch develop. And I want to thank again everyone for all the wonderful questions, and hope that everyone has learned new stuff. And we'll be back on Friday starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. And we usually do this on Tuesdays and Fridays. I think we'll have all of September. We shouldn't have any days off for the live stream, but just again, I'm just grateful to be part of such a wonderful community, and I appreciate everyone's support and usage of Steinberg products to kind of realize their creativity. I think we still don't have any questions. And with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much, and we'll see everyone back on Friday, starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy. Goodbye.